Alright, so today we're going to talk briefly about making a splint. The specific splint is the conical resting splint. It's a resting splint, so that means it's only used to support the arches of the fingers, hands, and wrist. So you want to keep that in mind as you're making the splint and forming it to your client. There's a super awesome, handy file that we have that actually goes through a bunch of different splints. This is a specific outline of, it gives you a pattern and then kind of a how-to step-by-step, so that's really helpful. Most often when you are making a splint, you will have a set pattern that you can then lay on the material, mark it, and then cut it out. So I'll start kind of showing it and I'll just talk through as we do that. So this is just kind of, I cut it out. This would match the pattern on that paper that I just showed you, and that would be my pattern, and then you take a piece of your material and lay it on and then cut it out. So I already did that just to save us some time. So for this splint you want to fit it volarly, which means palm of your client down on top of the material, and it will vary from clinic to clinic what kind of material you use. For this one, it would be really good to have one that has more drape so that you can heat it and reheat it a couple times. That way you have time to shape it specifically for your client. So I have my lovely assistant here today. If you wouldn't mind, we're going to pretend that her left hand is the one that was affected. This splint is most commonly used for someone who had a stroke. So in this case, if she had a stroke, it would be left hemiplegia, or if they have some sort of palsy, also if they have some sort of brachial plexus injury and this needs some support. So those splint only support from about halfway down the forearm and then the full hand and wrist area. So I will orient this for you and then just lay it. You'll want the middle finger situated like that, and you kind of want to shape, and it's okay if it's way bigger because you can cut things down and measure after you heat. I'm not going to actually heat because it's just paper, but you would put it in the water, wait till it gets to about 150 to 175, it will be bendy, and it's really hot, so you want to pull it out with like tongs or some sort of spatula material. You don't want to pull it out with your bare fingers because you will burn yourself. And then most often you also will let it cool a little bit before you put the client's hand on it, but not too much because you want to be able to bend it. So first you would start proximally, and you would pull this up, and this would stick. Since it's paper, it's not going to stick super well, but it would bend here, and then you would want to shape it this way. You want to keep in mind as you're doing this, if you just lift your arm, right here where the trapezium and the thumb carpals start coming out, everyone's going to be different a little bit here, and if this was that thermoplastic material, this could rub, and that would not be comfortable, and since it's resting, you want to support and not rub. But you can cut this and shape it to your individual client. You also want to make sure that the radius and ulna processes, the stylic processes, are going to be, as you can see, the material would go over it, so you want to make sure that that's comfortable and not rubbing as well. And then I will get the preform. So after you do that, you'd want to add straps, and I kind of pre-did this as well to help prepare for the video, just so it'd be going easier. You just want to set your hand in there. Right through there. So I will attach it, and then I can show you a little bit better. So I just use pipe cleaners. You would want to use Velcro or some sort of comfy strap for your client. Obviously these are going to be a little bit scratchy, but they get the point across for what we want to talk about here. It's also very important as you're forming the splint that you keep in mind to keep the client's wrist in a functional position. That way once they're done wearing the splint, you want to slightly clap, there you go. That way when they're done wearing the splint, they'll be more ready to take on activities and working on activities to get them back their movement fully back, especially if they had a stroke and they're hypotonic. So that is what it would finish look like. The name Conical comes from this cone. You would want it to be bent slightly bigger towards this area of the hand, the radius side, and then slightly smaller since your little pinky is smaller. As you can see, I also bent this piece of it down just to show for her it actually needs to be bent a little bit more. I can even just rip it a little bit like that, and you always want to make sure it's as smooth as possible for the client. And then this, how it nicely shapes and supports those arches of her hand. And this, like I said again, is paper, so it's not ideal, but the second band here would be right at the wrist, and so it would support those two wrist creases that are in there. So, and just like that is how you would have it. And for this splint, since it is thermoplastic, you would not want to leave it in the sun or anywhere that it could get super hot, because heat is what activates it and makes it flexible and bendy. And so if it would be left out and then they put it on, it could get all misshapen, and then it wouldn't support how it's supposed to or work how it's supposed to. And you would also want to, for wear schedule, it's a supportive splint, so you would want to start out with like an hour of wear, and then take it off and check, especially around the processes of the bones, and then the thumb area and the pinky up here as well. Since this is folded down, you want to make sure that that's supporting and not rubbing. And if it is the client, you have to make sure that they know that they can come back and you can fix it for them, because otherwise that will just rub their skin raw, and that will be more harm than help in the end. And eventually you'd want to probably increase it to about 4 hours. It would depend on the diagnosis and the situation, so you'd have to kind of decide that. But it should be probably about 4 hours a day, or as needed for them if it's painful and they want more support. And I believe that is it. I guess I can talk about the placement of the strap. So you want it crossed over the knuckles. Also, you'll want to shift it a little bit more proximally, more on the back of the hand, because you don't want the Velcro to be rubbing on those knuckles, and you want them, if they need to work on and be able to do that comfortably without rubbing the Velcro. This one right at the wrist to support right there and be nice and tight, and then this one back here. And keep in mind when you're shaping too that these corners do not dig, so you can always bend them out as well a little bit, and just make sure that they're flat and smoothed out down here as well for them. One more thing, so I mentioned already how to clean, or how to care for it. Don't leave it in the sun or anywhere it could get hot, because the heat activates the plastic. But how to clean it, since it is plastic, it is fairly simple to clean. You can just use a warm rag with a little bit of soap. A little bit of warm water shouldn't activate it too much, just as long as it's not like boiling hot. And you can just wipe it down on the inside and on the outside, and plastic it wipes up fairly cleaner. I wouldn't put any super abrasive cleaners on it, or any super toxic, because that also, if a little bit of that stays on there, it could irritate the skin. So that would not be something you'd want to do, since you're going to be hopefully wearing it eventually up to like 4 hours a day. And you also, I talked about day, but you don't want to wear this one at night. It's resting, so it's during the day. If you need rest during activity or some support during an activity, during nighttime, you want to remove it and place it somewhere safe where it won't get crushed or moved, and then you'll forget about it. And that is a little introduction and overview of the conical resting splint. And that is all I have for my video.